True that. That being said, how much credit does Brad Stevens deserve for the Celtics' success this season, Nick?
Brad Stevens deserves more credit for the success of his team in 2018 than any coach in the league deserves for the success of their team. But that still could mean he's been overcredited, if that makes sense. If you want to chop it up into a pie, Brad Stevens, I'll give him about a third of it. I give Danny Ainge about a third of it for selecting Jason Tatum, for executing the Nets trade years back, for trading for Kyrie, having the assets to do it. And I give the players about a third of it for, despite the injuries, playing at the level they are, having that commitment to defense that they've had. There's no other coach in the league that I would give a third of the credit for the success their teams had. Only Pop would even come close to it. I think what people push back on is he hasn't been getting a third of the credit. He's been getting 80% of the credit. People have been acting like he's playing with a bunch of guys they signed out of Dunkin' Donuts on Mass Street. That's where people push back. But he's been brilliant, and he deserves a lot of the credit he's getting.
When you're successful, there's a lot of credit. It's just a matter of who you want to give credit to. But you have to start at the top of Boston, Danny Ainge. Him assembling the type of team that he had. A team that we didn't know that, man, they can sustain injury and still be able to maintain a high level. So that's one of the things you have to give Danny Ainge for. He's the one who hired the coach. All right? He's the one that had this college system. So he's a pro coach coaching at Butler. How did we ever know that? There's nothing he ever did at Butler that we thought would transfer to the NBA. So Danny Ainge's ability to be able to go out and find a guy that had something. We don't see this system work. We don't see college coaches go to the NFL and it worked. We don't see them coming from college basketball going to the NBA and working. So they've made a lot of the right decisions at the top. But this is a talented roster. This is Jason Tatum, the leading scorer, Nick. It's top 5 pick, right?
Yeah, number 3 overall.
Terry Rozier, what pick was he?
He was a 14th pick, I believe. It was lottery pick.
Okay, Al Horford. What about him?
Al Horford was first-round pick years and years ago.
Jaylen Brown, top 5?
Number 3 overall pick.
Okay, Marcus Morris.
Lottery pick, I think 12th.
Okay, Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart, 6th pick of the draft.
I mean, my goodness, people don't talk about that. What other team outside of Golden State, and they're top-heavy because they got some of the superstars.
That many lottery picks on it? It's a good point.
I mean, so Brad Stevens is a very, very good coach. All right? They've done a great job as an organization getting the coach there. Brad Stevens, you got to give him credit for 2 things. He's come up with a game plan that, with this talent and injuries, is very, very effective. And number 2 is Brad Stevens has given, and his staff have given these guys what I call a recipe to be successful. At their end of the year meetings last year, all right, they got better. What he told them to work on, they got better. Tatum becoming a star. What they have helped him develop as a basketball player, that's what they do well as a staff. So you have to give him credit for game planning, and you have to give him credit for he has put together plans that these players can develop and develop their own individual ability to be able to blend into a team concept.
I think it's what you said earlier. There was such a fall from expectation when Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward were out that no matter what happened, even if there was just a modicum of success from Brad Stevens, you were going to say, well, look what he was able to do with these players. But those players happen to be very talented players, but without those 2 superstars, you almost place them in a little bit of a higher pedestal as a result.
It's not the same as what we do with Belichick. Belichick, we give him all the credit, but he's playing with lesser talent than Brad Stevens. I know they're in the same region, a lot of the same fan base, but Belichick, he goes out and gets other players off other teams, turn them into star players inside of his system. But very seldom do you see those players go anywhere else and be very, very productive. Yeah. Brad Stevens, if they want to make some trades, man, they got a bunch of players that people would love to have them on their team.
And just quickly here, if the Celtics' offensive and defensive rankings were flipped, no one would talk about that they don't have talent. If they had the number 1 offense in the league by a wide margin and a mediocre defense, as opposed to what they had this year, which was the opposite, people will talk about how talented they are. It's hard for us via stats or even the eye test to see how talented guys are defensively, so we attribute that to the coach. And again, this guy's my coach of the year. I think he's the best coach in the NBA, but I do understand why it's somewhat overstated.
What do you think, Nick? How much credit does Brad Stevens deserve for how much success the Celtics team has had this year?
He's the best coach in the NBA. He deserves an enormous amount of credit. Yet he still might be getting a disproportionate amount of the credit. Let me set the table a little bit about who Brad Stevens is. He's not only a guy that took Butler to the national championship game with Gordon Hayward, but then when Gordon Hayward left, he took Butler back to the national championship game when its best player was Shelvin max. So his college credentials were impeccable. He then is the rare college coach that transitions seamlessly into somehow, but possibly maybe even a better pro coach than he was college coach. But when we talk about the Celtics, we can't talk about them as if it's Brad Stevens and a bunch of Sullys they found at Dunkin' Donuts on
ugly
Mass Street. Right, like Cece made a great point earlier about the draft capital they've used to put together this team. Danny Ainge deserves as much credit as any GM in basketball for how he's put this team together. And these young players and veterans and Al Horford deserve credit for playing up to their maximum potential. So I go 33, 33, 33, the coach, the GM, and the collective players.
You have to give all of them some credit. Players hate when they're well coached, that when they make shots or they make plays that the coach gets credit for it. You know, Jaylen Brown knocks down a three. We're giving Brad Stevens credit for it. Should he really get credit? Absolutely not. But on the flip side, players, what we do love is we love coaches that are very, very bright, that not only will challenge us, but they will challenge you in the sense that they give you a sense of peace and confidence. During the course of the game, LeBron will be stressed out worrying about, okay, what we're going to do, what's going to be our next move. When you are a good player and you got a great coach, there's a certain amount of worrying you don't do. You know that your coach is going to put you in a winning position. So in tough situations, you have less stress because you believe you have an advantage. You believe when you call a timeout, your guy will come up with a play or a wrinkle, so the players have more confidence. In critical situations, they don't worry as much. They have more confidence with the plays that are drawn up because the success of the coach, so the players buy into it. You're like, wow, players always buy into plays. No, they don't. But when the coach is successful and he has a track record and you see him getting open shots, you see him telling you things that are going to happen that you don't see, and they've happened the way the Celtics have been empowered, and then you see the overall basketball development of the players. You see younger players playing better. You see that holes in their game where they weren't defensive players, they become defensive players.
And that's from the coaching?
Yeah, it's their basketball program. It's what they practice. Absolutely. It comes from the coach of what I need you to do. Marcus Smart, how they've improved his game. Al Horford, how they've changed his game to being one of the most effective parts in his career. Tatum and Brown, they speak for themselves.
Terry Rozier.
Their overall basketball development. Terry Rozier developing from a backup into a star. But like Nick mentioned, this is the way these guys were supposed to play. They got 6, 7 lottery picks.
Tatum, 3rd overall pick. Rozier, 14th, I believe. Horford, lottery pick. Jaylen Brown, 3rd overall pick. Marcus Morris, I think, 6th overall pick. I'm sorry, Marcus Smart, 6th overall pick. Yeah. Marcus Morris, lottery pick. Like, it's not. These aren't, to use your phrase, ugly ducklings. These aren't guys they found off the scrap heap.
Yeah, now, I don't think Brad Stevens, I'm not going to give him that as being the best coach in the NBA. You'll be best in the NBA when you're judged off playing with great players. He's fortunate now that Kyrie got injured. Gordon, unfortunately, got injured. So he's playing with role players, a lot like he did at Butler.
College.
What do you do when you have star players? Because the greatest coaches in this game, they are judged by how the stars go. Popovich, how did David Robinson do? How did Tim Duncan do? How did Kawhi do? Phil Jackson? Pat Riley, all of them were judged on when you have great players, what do you do? So the stage has been set for next year. When he gets back his 2 great players, what do they play with inside this system?
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.